is the untiring John Chambers, a man of many talents and a global technocrat. In his 2 decades of running Cisco, Chambers transformed the computer networking startup into a dominant global tech company, growing its revenues from $1.2 billion to nearly $50 billion by the time he stepped down as CEO in 2015. Today, as a venture capitalist and a tech leader, Chambers has been promoting the broader development of both US and India as startup nations to harness the power of technology, especially as the decade of AI truly begins, which he believes will be the most fundamental tech change ever, greater than the internet and cloud combined, and one that will bring India and the US closer. Chambers is currently the chairman of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, which through its network of more than 400 global companies fosters closer public-private sector collaborations along the Indo-US corridor. Hello and welcome to Voices from the Valley. I'm Shreen Bhan, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome back on the program John Chambers. John, what an absolute pleasure to have you back on the program. And thank you for letting us film here in your beautiful home. It's absolutely stunning.
Well, it's an honor to be back together. I was looking, we've been doing interviews together for over 20 years. You clearly started when you were a teenager. I was a little bit over.
I wish.
And this is one of the most fun interviews I do every year with you. It's also unique looking at the Valley. You see San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Oakland, San Jose, and it's kind of, if you will, the birthplace of the new generation of startups and of high tech leading the world. So a fitting place to be.
A fitting place to be. And speaking of startups and high tech, the Wall Street Journal has a front page today on comparing what you did with Cisco and what's happening at Nvidia today.
Yes.
And Cisco was in 2000 the most valued company in the world on the back of the big transition that we saw then with the internet. And that's what we're seeing happen with Nvidia becoming the most valued company. As people draw these comparisons,
yes,
what's going through your mind?
Well, first of all, it shows you that technology moved from something that the techies did to impacting every one of our lives. So with the internet, changing the way you work, live, learn, and play, when I said that in '93, most people said, no, it's techies talking. It clearly did. As you watch, there's new generations of leaders about every 10 or 20 years. And I think it's very healthy. So it's Cisco for the internet, then about 4 or 5 players for the cloud, and now Nvidia is clearly leading in terms of AI. And they're kind of like the indication of the infrastructure of AI. If you want to know how AI is doing, look at how fast Nvidia is growing. And it is growing great. What is it, 540% in the last 2 years. What is also going through is the parallels. The parallels in terms of it changing our lives, changing the future of companies. If you weren't an internet company in the mid-90s, major players like Fidelity wouldn't even invest in your stock.
Yeah.
Today, if you're not into AI and if you haven't got a good AI strategy, well, implementation, investors won't invest in your company, even if you're a manufacturing company or a semiconductor company, et cetera. The pace of change, however, is different. It's about 10 times faster and can be 10 times bigger than what we saw just a few decades ago.
So it's not just the age of AI, it's the age of AI and agility.
Exactly. And I used to hate the word agility because I thought it was a marketing term. But you've got to be agile and you've got to be able to adjust. And so if you watch a startup company today as an example, during the internet era, and even as quickly as 5 years ago, it would take you 2 years to build your product, a year to get 5 or 6 really good references, $1 million run rate, 2 more years to get to 5 million run rate. That was a unicorn in India or in the US coming. Today, you build the product in 1 to 3 months, you get your customer references, $1 million run rate the next quarter, and you're going to hit a $5 million run rate probably in 18 months, maybe 12. That speaks to change, but it isn't just going to be the startups that do this, not just your young Turks that you've been sponsoring, congratulations, for how many years now?
22.
22, wow. So it isn't just the young startups in India or the young startups here. Everybody can either disrupt or get disrupted, but the same thing's going to happen to big companies. People compare it to right before the dot-com bust. I think that is wrong. Now, don't misunderstand me. Are there going to be some spectacular train wrecks with AI and companies that just missed the mode, got overfunded, et cetera? But I'd say, using an American term, I'm trying to learn cricket, as the Olympics hopefully will come to India in the mid-30s coming up. We'll see if we can win that one. But I would compare it to being, in baseball terms, the second inning. So where the internet growth, et cetera, clearly peaked and there was overinvestment in certain categories, Cisco came through it fine, but it was very painful. I think we're in the second inning in terms of what AI is going to represent. I think this will be the decade of AI, and it will be the century of AI. And it will be the foundation to determine economic growth of companies and directions. I'd parallel it, however, to India. I think this decade, and I said this, as you know, I'm the biggest bull optimist on India. You named me that. You named that 8 years ago. But I think this is the decade of India and the century for India. India will become the largest economy in the world. I was the first one to really say that very aggressively. And I will say today, India will probably be, by the end of the century, if we execute right, maybe 90% bigger than the Chinese economy and 30% bigger than the U.S. But if the U.S. and India work together, that's the other thing that can change. So similarities, it's fun watching the leading tech company in each category. Jensen has done an amazing job at Nvidia, but I think they're at the very earlier stage in what can happen. I really believe in that company.
And you still believe we're just scratching the surface as far as AI is concerned today, and the headroom and the potential for growth is explosive from here?
It's unlimited. And what you can do with companies and countries working together is also unlimited. So if you think about it in terms that your viewership will understand, well, there's a lot of number crunching going on with AI and certain applications that are there. The average enterprise is not even in the first inning on using AI in a meaningful way across customer service, across coding, across sales and marketing, interfacing to their customers. It's just getting started in healthcare. AI will help us solve cancer and cure cancer, not in 30 years, but a large part of it in the next decade. So you're just beginning this cycle, and it's kind of like the internet when you first started just doing or entering orders online or doing a little bit of customer service online. That was just the beginning. It will peak many years from now, and then we'll see what's next.
You know, speaking of what's next, John, and since you are a big believer in what AI can potentially do as far as the economy is concerned, you're putting your money where your mouth is, and you're investing in a whole bunch of AI-driven startups, about 20-odd companies in your portfolio, which are AI companies, essentially. What's most exciting about what they're attempting to solve for, what they're attempting to do?
Now you've hit what I love. I love being a part of the internet, and together we change the world, the way you work, live, learn, and play. The next thing I want to do in my life, in the business side, is get startups growing around the world, but especially in the U.S. and India, and getting a unique balance there in terms of how the market evolves. So what I'm doing now, I believe startups and small companies getting bigger will be where the entire job growth comes in India and in the U.S. And large companies in total, because of productivity and part of AI, will probably not in total add headcount. So it speaks to the strength of each state in India or the state in the US, 50 in the US, 29 in India. You've got to have startups really driving through it. What am I most excited about? I have 20 startups. 5 of them are really young. But out of the other 15, 9 are already unicorns, which is very unusual for a small fund. We've had 3 of the top exits in the last 2.25 years out of the market selling to strategics. As you know, it's been a terrible year, terrible 2.5 years for venture capital, lowest returns they've seen in 10 years. But with Pensando being sold to AMD, Lisa Su, I really believe in her big time and her vision for AMD. OpenGov being sold to Cox Communications. And then we're recently Dedrone on defense industry, probably the largest transaction that's been done in the defense industry, being sold to Axon. Also was fortunate enough to get Rubrik, one of the top 5 IPOs that are occurring. So I love startups. I love growing them. I love now watching others learn. And I met 2 of my top startups, interesting enough, Unifor and Safe Security, at your session in India with MIT, where they said these are the hottest startups going on in the industry. They turned out to be tremendously successful. So what I'm doing now, I watch for a business market in transition combined with a new technology. AI as a technology or cybersecurity. I then bet on the CEO for she or he to say, here's where I'm going to go, here's my vision, who wants to be coached. I then go straight to customers. I'm a enterprise person. So I usually know the customers well. I say, what do you think of this company? Is it really differentiable? Is their culture similar to ours, et cetera? And then we outline what we can do together. So I'm more of a coach, a confidant. Even one of my startup CEOs, I get very close to my team, as you know. And he said, would you marry me and my wife? Because I helped coach him through that part of the stage. His struggle with getting the right woman, perfect for him, by the way, that he selected, was harder than him being a great CEO.
Yeah, we know you do all kinds of coaching, John, but
Yes.
let's address your forecast for 2024. You just ended up telling me that it was a challenging 2.5 years for VCs, not for your fund in specific.
We were very fortunate and lucky.
Yeah, you were lucky. But 2024, a better year as far as VCs are concerned, a better year for IPOs. Do you believe that we are likely to see the return of tech IPOs in 2024?
Yes and yes. If you really look at it, I tend to be a little bit contrarian. I don't think I see around corners, but I'm good on pattern recognition. And the market transitions we made and called in the market have been pretty good. All the way back to calling in 2020, there was an issue with a virus coming out of China that was slowing down the Southeast economy. I saw it in my startups in Asia, and I said, this is going to affect the world on it. Also called inflation would displace COVID as the major issue over 2 years ago, which it did, unfortunately. In looking at this year, made the predictions in December of 2023, the number one thing I said, this will be the decade of AI, not the year of AI, the decade. The second thing I said, it'd be the decade of India. India's emergence, not just on a global stage, but India's emergence toward being the number one economy in the world in terms of the direction. In terms of the startups and IPOs, what you watch first is the markets. And the markets in India have been going very strong, as you know.
And in the U.S.
And in the U.S. And so what first moves are the markets. And what moves second is you begin to see M&A activity, which we clearly have. Not big numbers, but reasonably good. That's going to accelerate. Then you see the large companies starting to invest in startups because often they can't move fast enough, especially with AI themselves. They either invest or acquire startups to move. That is usually followed by you get some IPOs going, and then you move back into the normal stage of IPOs. And I think if you're measuring the innovation of a country or a region, tracking unicorns is the right way to go.
Yeah.
But even though the term is out of vogue now, i.e. decacorns, I actually think decacorns is what government leaders should focus on. Once you get a unicorn platform and a series going well. Because when you get to be a decacorn, let's say between 10 billion and 100 billion, there are only 43 in the US today, high tech. That number, in my opinion, in the next 6 or 7 years will go over 100. When you get to be a decacorn, that's when you move from 1,000 or 2,000 people as a unicorn.
So the job creation
10,000. That's where the economic strength for the future. Whichever countries lead in technology, especially in AI, are going to lead in economic growth, defense, et cetera. And that's why I keep pushing back. The combination of the US and India, I think, can change the world, and we ought to dream bigger. So yes, I think barring a political surprise globally, I'm talking about geopolitics on it, I think you can continue to see things improve. When the market keeps going like it is, hitting new highs in India and in the US, inevitably IPOs follow because your price of the existing stocks go up.
Yeah.
You want new opportunities, et cetera, on it. And in fairness, the market lost track, and this is where it was similar to 2000. Lost track, it was purely about growth and unreasonable expectations, not a focus on cash flow and profitability. You've seen the
return of that.
You've seen the return of let's run it like a real company, except with agility, as you said earlier, and tremendous speed. So yes, I'm the optimist for that. I am all in. I'm investing on more companies, and my investments are almost entirely in India and in the US.
You know, you talk about the India-US relationship, and you know, you've been a big champion and a big believer in the India story, but there's a long distance still to go to fully realize the potential of this partnership and this relationship. Where do you believe it's being constrained today?
Gotcha. I love your questions, and the cool things, we've done this so many times. I know what your current question is, your next one, the one after. So let's first talk about how far it's come. When we outlined in Gujarat, and 2017. I think you were actually there. We talked about major projections that nobody thought were possible. That was in front of Prime Minister Modi. But we projected that India would be the fastest growing country in the world, that India would be the model for the rest of the world, not an emerging country moving into a developed country, but a model for how you did many things. And you see that innovation occurring. You have been the fastest growing economy, and there's still a lot of room to make it more inclusive and to create more jobs, but tremendous progress. As the largest democracy, watching your elections just occurred, and congratulations to Prime Minister Modi. It was a smooth election. There was no issues in the market, and I think that's a model for the rest of the world's democracy to follow. And now you're seeing the country lead in innovation. My challenge is don't be satisfied with just what we're doing. We've got to dream bigger in terms of the overall approach. So this is what I really think about in terms of where we are today. I think we've got to look at where we go. I do think it will be the century for India. I think it will be also the decade for India. And if we do it right by the U.S. and India working together in a partnership that's never been done before. And while there's good progress, I was just at the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum session in Washington, and with the Democrats and Republicans there, the only thing they agree upon, and they both laughed about it, is the partnership with India. Yeah. But it is the ability to dream. But then let's take the dreams bigger and say, how do we do something no one's ever done before? How do we not only say we have the tightest relationship, and I think President Biden and Prime Minister Modi said it well. They said this is the defining strategic partnership for the 21st century. And what we decide to do as countries will determine the economic future, I think, of a global economy, especially the democracies. But I think we need to dream bigger. Why not do something no one else has done?
Like what?
Let's think of an industrial policy between our two countries. And I normally don't believe in government getting involved, but to your point, this is moving so fast, and you got to be agile. Why wouldn't we outline an unbelievable goal?